Good morning. My name is Aurelie Cormier, and welcome to the Intentional Wellness Parenting Show, where we set an intention to create healing and wellness every living day. Let me ask you, have you felt sometimes that life is just hard? Wonder if I told you that our life is actually meant for joy, fun, and good health. Of course, it doesn't just happen, but the first step to getting there is to believe that good health is possible and to envision what you would love. From there, we can choose the simple health habits that give our minds, bodies, and spirits the nourishment it needs to work well. Over 2 million people in the U.S. will be diagnosed with cancer this year. Between 600,000 and 1 million are preventable. Our genes are not our destiny, yet our epigenetics can be affected by environmental factors. Therefore, the best time to make a difference is now. So let's dive right in.
Welcome, everybody. Great to have you here. We're going to dive right in, and we're going to dive right in quickly with the most incredible show and host here. I'm Dr. Pat. I get to take this journey. Here's the question, folks. This is the question. How do you live with a greater awareness of environment? Today, Aurelie is going to break this down for us in a couple of ways. One, why you should be aware of your environment. Two, deciding, well, is it okay or not? Three, what do I do with it? And how do I get it to the place where now I'm aware, I'm not aligned, I got to make a change? Aurelie, I boiled this down really simply for people. Did I leave anything out right there?
No, that was perfect. Yeah.
Look.
Yeah. So, I'm glad that you brought those things out because we do need to have a greater awareness of our environment. And this is highlighted. I want to share a true story with you about a gentleman I worked with several years ago who was in his early 50s. He lived in northern Maine, which I think of as a pristine area in New England. And his original oncologist had worked really hard at getting his pancreatic cancer under control. And they got to a place where they couldn't get it to, have an arrest of his cancer. And so they decided to send us to our hospital in Boston because we had a clinical trial that if we could get his pancreatic cancer under control, he'd be eligible for the clinical trial. So he came to our floor, just the nicest man. And we worked really hard, but we weren't having much luck getting his pancreatic cancer under control either. And he was aware of this. And so he looked me straight in the eye one day. I'll never forget it. And he said to me, "Aurelie, I don't want to die." Mm-hmm. And I knew he meant it with every cell in his body. And I really wanted to help him too. And for somebody that was so young, hardworking, just a really good person, I thought, well, let me see if there's anything that is, could be a cause of what is going on now. So I said to him, well, can you tell me a little bit about where you live? Is there any toxins within your home? No, he couldn't think of anything. And I said, well, how about your yard or your work area? And he said, well, he had an apple orchard and he was the one responsible for tending that apple orchard and making sure that the pests were not going to be a problem. So he was spraying the apple orchard with these chemicals twice a year. And because he had to use them so often, he stored them in his 3-bay garage that he made by hand. It was absolutely gorgeous. He was incredibly talented. And I put my head down and within myself, because I didn't want to show him this, I just sighed to myself and I said, you know what I would recommend is that you get rid of those chemicals because that may be a factor contributing to your pancreatic cancer. Maybe not the only one, but, a significant one. So we continued to work at trying to help him survive so he could be eligible for this clinical trial. We were not able to do that. We eventually sent him home to be with his wife, and he died shortly after Christmas. And this man impacted on my oncology practice and my mission today to bring greater awareness of our environment to other people. So hopefully we can prevent it in others.
I think it's so important. And for those of you out there and you're just tuning in, let me just say, you're talking here with Aurelie Cormier. And did I say that right? Did I make it too
Yes.
French for you right there? I need that real
No,
French.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Intentional wellness. And this is intentional wellness parenting with Aurelie, but it's more than that. And when we're talking about the environment, we have done many shows about the environment, but there are so many nuances that you're not aware of, like that. The other one, let me just make a few comments to folks. There's a simple solution for you to manage your drains in your house, the drains that the water goes down, because the gases that come up from that are absurd. It's just part of our process. And if we know this, we can take these actions. But many of us that grew up, and especially like me from New Jersey, we did some strange things when they used to come spray the crops. Okay. I'm just saying, it's like the Godfather movie where he's got the can and he's spraying the kid. But here we are today and we have to learn this. So let's talk about this. We now have much more information available to us. We have knowledge that we can get, but listening to you or calling you, you can guide people through this. Because that gesture, putting that in the garage, somebody may not know. I mean that this is not easy to tackle. Aurelie, I want you to comment on this. I have a friend who's in the middle of a major lawsuit, and I'm environmentally aware.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I grew up on New York, and as a young kid, walking on a beach of Jersey, I stepped on a hypodermic needle, and that was a whole different. I know, right? But in this analysis, we were able to demonstrate that the flow of water, then moving over the property line, and the silt that surfaced from it, so much so that when you cut the grass, you could see the silt on the shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So here's ignorance, and I want you to comment on it. So we thought, slam dunk, let us just show you this. Silt in the air, silt on the property, silt on your clothes, silt in your house, silt killing your plants. In the world we live in today, we can't get people to understand something as simple as silt toxicity. So walk us through the landscape that you deal with about how do we take this powerful real-time story, and let's talk about the incidences that are showing up of childhood cancer and beyond. What is the impact here? And thank you for that story.
Yeah.
I wish we had more time, but thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to make anybody anxious or fearful, but I do want to bring this to the moment. And the moment that we're in is we are seeing an increase in childhood cancer since 1975. And these are not little cancers. These are things like leukemia, brain tumors, sarcomas, which have increased by 42%, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, that's increased by 34%, and germ cell tumors in the ovaries and testes. And just this spring, there was a report that came out, which was published in Nature, that actually reported there's another phenomenon happening on a global scale, not just in the United States, of an increase in 12 cancers in people younger than 50, which we are not used to. We do have some people that will develop cancers in younger ages, but this phenomenon of an increase of diagnosing cancers in people less than 50 is happening on a global scale. The first three are all in the GI tract: colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, and stomach cancer. There's a lot of research going on right now to try to figure out why that's the case. But one of the things they're looking at is the gut microbiome. Could that be related to any of this? There's breast cancer, prostate cancer, uterine cancer. We already know that women are greatly impacted by breast cancer, and they're like the health managers of the home, and they're working hard every day to give their children a better life. It's really hard when women develop breast cancer or anybody in the family develops cancer. So that's why I'm trying to bring this information to people, because it is a real life issue.
I want to just say this on a real practical level. I know we don't want to scare people, but I want to say this is not to scare you, it's to make you aware. What's scary is the disease.
Right.
That's why we're sharing this. And it's scary for so many people. You hear, we're very active here in the breast cancer movement. And so there are a lot of jokes that are made in that community of people, but hearing the C word is not a word that anyone that I know wants to hear. And yet what you're talking about is we can do some things about it, correct? This is what we're talking about it today.
Yeah. And one of the things that we need to do about it is just, as we're talking about, having a greater awareness of what's in our environment, because nothing's going to come out and say, oh, I'm PFAS and I'm impacting on your health. These are things that are ubiquitous in our environment that is important for us to be aware of so we can protect ourselves. And so I think it's easy if we break it down into what's in the home, what's in the yard, what's in our workspace, what's, in our playtime. And the main thing that I want to convey is the best time to start is now. And we're never too old to start. I've seen people that were older who were able to turn their cancers around, and how many people could potentially have avoided a cancer because they were, working at these strategies and actually protected themselves and prevented themselves from getting cancer. So in terms of things that we can look at, and especially as we like to talk about here, having an intention as parents for ourselves and our children so we can do more of what we love and spend less time being sick. Let's look at our kitchen first. And believe it or not, in our kitchen, there's a lot of things that actually have BPA in them, which can impact on our health. And bisphenol A is actually in a lot of hard plastics. They're in recyclable water bottles. They're in epoxy resins. So believe it or not, water bottles, baby bottles, food and beverage packaging. So much of what our food is being stored in or being wrapped in has BPA in it. And believe it or not, it contributes to the development and the growth of tumors, as well as metastases in breast cancer in general, as well as triple negative breast cancer, and to the development and also to, in some cases, tumor aggressiveness and high risk breast cancer. So if we can use a substitute or an alternative that isn't going to impact on our health, that would be better for us. But it's also been found that BPA is harmful to the fetus, to infants, to children, and some of the side effects are on the brain, on behavior, when a baby is being formed in utero, on the development of prostate cancer or the prostate gland itself. And in addition, this can impact on normal growth and development and the function of the reproductive organs, because BPA is one of those endocrine disruptors. So it can have effects on the testes, the ovaries, on lowered fertility, on early puberty, low birth weight, obesity, diabetes, endometriosis, and some respiratory issues. And so if we're thinking of alternatives and what you might want to use instead of, the plastic containers or so many things when we're going to the grocery store and we're getting our fruits and vegetables and there's plastic bags to put them in, we can be putting our fruits and vegetables in mesh bags so they don't even touch plastic.
Yeah.
Or when we get them home, put them in glass containers, take them out of the plastic bags, put them in glass containers so they're stored in glass in our homes, because it's when the plastic is warmed up, that's when the plastic can leach into the food that then we're consuming or our children are consuming, and their bodies are much smaller than ours and can have a greater impact on their health.
Yeah. I mean, we could do a whole show on microwaves. I mean, we could do a whole show on that.
Yeah.
But we're not really even going to touch that in this show. But I think there are things you should know about a microwave. Anything that can change the DNA of something, you got to look at, right?
Right.
But being that aware of the environment and the plastic in it, we can do some things now. And you're right. My mom, old school, everything glass. Milk was in a glass bottle, right?
Right.
Everything was glass.
Exactly.
How do I know? I used to knock it off the table and break it all the time. But let's go to water, because kind of the same dilemma, but kind of like compounded like 10 times worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And one more thing I want to say about an alternative that I think is really important is that, if women can breastfeed their babies today rather than putting them in a plastic baby bottle, that's great. But some women are not able to
No.
breastfeed. And if they're not, there are glass baby bottles available with these like silicone nipples that are more aligned with how the babies have to get breast milk from the mother. And so they're low flow. And I'm not, I say this just to be helpful, because when I did a research, Amazon did have these glass baby bottles with the low flow nipples. So you can think about that rather than a plastic baby bottle.
Mm.
But getting back to water and our water supply, what I recommend for anybody today, because there's so many chemicals in our water, whether that's PFAS that, when the firemen are doing their testing, or, you're in a fire zone out west and they have to spray these flame retardants on top of the fires that are exploding across the country because of the dryness and climate change. It is then draining off into our water, our lakes, our streams, and then our water supply. So I recommend everybody have a water filter today. And typically, there's many different types. I highly recommend you go to the internet and just do a Google search on types of water filters. Some people will use a Brita, although it can be nice because the water tastes nice. I don't recommend it, only because it's filtering out the chlorine to make it taste better. It's not filtering out the chemicals. So there are some that are filtering out the chemicals. And there's ones that you can put under your counter. There's one's called reverse osmosis. It takes quite a bit of chemicals out of the water. I have one that's called Water Chef. It takes 70 different chemicals out of the water, including 10 different drugs. It will take lead out. Even for people that have a newer home today where they don't have lead pipes in their home, because we have an older infrastructure program in the United States, a lot of the pipes that come to the house have lead in them. And luckily, over the last several years, with the new bills that were passed in Congress, they are replacing a lot of these lead pipes around the country with newer pipes that don't contain lead, because lead can impact on a young child's brain, can impact on anybody's brain, but especially a young child. So, and if for those that, like my mom, who's when we were growing up on the Cape, our house backed up to a marsh. Every summer, the helicopters used to come and try to, spray the pesticides on the marsh to kill the greenheads so that they wouldn't bother the tourists. And little did we know at the time what those pesticides were. But years later, we found out it was actually DDT, which can also impact on your different health risks, especially cancer. And if I had known at the time what I know now, I would have, instead of being out there being very curious as to these helicopters spraying, I would have been in the house, closed the door, locked, closed all the windows to protect myself. And knock on wood, I have not gotten cancer. I pray to God I never do. But for people that are in situations like that, where they do have these forever chemicals on the lawn, in the water, there are whole house water filters. My mom has one. She, it was about $1,500 to buy it. She had to have it installed twice a year. She has the filter changed. But I can tell you from being down there recently, the water is absolutely delicious, and it's well worth it because it'll filter out a lot of chemicals, lead, medications that can be found in the water today.
Yeah. And let's just talk to this point real quick, because those of us that have been impacted by water, let's just say water, whether it was my situation or others, we became advocates. So much so, I learned about this through a company that I worked with, a nonprofit. And here's the thing I want to say to people is, once upon a time, we used to say drinking water from the faucet was the best. Remember that one? Okay. Yeah. So then if that's true, why when you put it on your plants die? So thing number one, you just have to watch some of this to know. But the other thing now is not having a water. If you can afford to put some kind of filter in your house, and it goes everywhere from the water filter to, I have a machine, and my machine will give me pH water, natural water, acidity water. This is the move we have to try to make. But if you cannot do that, you have to figure out a way to get water that isn't stored in plastic.
Right.
Because that's like kind of counteractive to what you shared earlier.
Right. So that's why it's better to have a glass bottle to store your water in.
Or stainless steel. I have several, what do you call it? Stainless steel. And I don't mean aluminum. I'm not talking aluminum.
Not aluminum.
But outside of this, what we're sharing with people today is the bottom line is the environment. And we have a few minutes left. And I really want to go to this next thing about furniture, cleaning things that you put in your dryer. I cannot mention any names, but things that you just rip off and you throw it in your dryer and it makes everything soft. And I bet if you muscle tested that thing, you'd get a different result. So bring us home with some of these other things that people should be aware of and a call to action.
So cleaning products, this is a really good one for we women out there who my patients were the ones that brought the environment to my attention. And so when that happened, I went home, I did an inventory of my chemicals in my house. I couldn't believe how many. But in terms of my cleaners, I said, all right, I'm only going to have 5. This was like 30 years ago. And then 10 years later, I'm like, well, you know what? There's a lot of green products today. They're much safer for me, for the environment. And I used those for a couple of years, but they were rather pricey. So now what I do is I use something very effective that's non-toxic for me, non-toxic for the environment, and is very inexpensive. Baking soda, which can clean your sink in your kitchen, your bathroom, your tub, your toilet, your tile if it gets mold on it. White vinegar, which is also really good for cleaning the countertops, the mirrors, the floors. And then lemon juice and olive oil I mix together, and that's my furniture polish. And it's easy peasy. But another thing, I used to use Drano all the time. Drano, you could tell that stuff was toxic. Now what I do is I pour some hot water down the drain. A little bit may go down, but it may still be plugged. So then I take a half a cup of baking soda, 1 cup of vinegar, white vinegar. It'll bubble up. I let it sit for 10 minutes, pour some hot water over it from the tea kettle, and bingo, my drains. It has never not worked for me, and it is super inexpensive when you compare it to other products. So that's a really good place to start. And the other thing I would say, especially in light of the first story I shared, is try to go to an alternative of organic gardening or regenerative agriculture. And there are landscapers out there that will do that. The last thing you want to do is expose yourself, your pets, your children to pesticides because they are neurotoxic and immunotoxic. And if we can do that, I will tell you that the body has an ability to heal itself. And this is one of the most important messages I want to give you is that, and that's why I say it's never too late. There is 2 researchers that wrote a great book, Remarkable Recovery, and they did a deep dive into 100 people that had, terminal illnesses and completely recovered from these terminal illnesses. And after looking very carefully into their medical records and what they did, they hypothesized that the nervous system, the immune system, and the metabolic system When those three systems work well together, the body has an ability to heal itself. And that's why if you can keep your environment as clean and as non-toxic as possible to protect your epigenetics, to protect your nervous system, your immune system, your metabolic system, you give your body, but more especially your children's body, a better chance of living longer, healthier, with less risk of cancer, where you have more fun and less time being sick. So I hope that has been helpful to you today.
Well, all of these things are helpful. And then when you put them together, let's just give us a wrap up here. You can take each of the things, Aurelie, you mentioned today, and you can do one thing in each area. And so what we're trying to say is you don't have to run out and go buy a system for your faucet. Now you have new information, so you can figure out what you can do with that.
Right.
Long-term effects of plastic, we already know. I mean, we know what happens with that. So make and do some kind of change. I think that is the first step. Aurelie, how do people find out more about you? How do they get engaged with what you're doing? What are you up to?
Yeah. So they can go to my website, aureliecormier.com. You will see different tabs. It will tell, it'll have my blogs, my monthly blogs. It'll tell a little bit about me, my Transformation Talk radio shows, all the archives are there. My workshop page, I do have a workshop this Thursday. You can check that out. I have books and publications, so you can see all my children's book and a couple other books I've contributed to. And then if you have a particular issue, a particular question, something I might be able to help you with, please go to my Work With Me page and just answer 3 questions. Send me your request. I do have a calendar there with appointment times. You can schedule yourself in for appointment, and I'd be happy to help you.
Thank you so much for this. And there's more to come on this. I want to thank all of you for tuning us in, turning us on. But again, we just want to really encourage you to make a decision. If you can't do everything we've talked about it, at least pick one thing and then pick another as time goes on. And you'll see if you make these incremental changes. Now, those of you out there, if you can afford to put a special filter on your drinking water, highly encourage you to do it. There are so many reasons, and many of you live in different parts of the world, but I will tell you this. Water from my faucet has killed more plants in my house until I realized to purify the water with 0 pH. But you can see what happens in a short period of time. Aurelie, thank you so much for today. Thank you all. Thank you, Emily. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Intentional Wellness Parenting Show with Aurelie Cormier and Dr. Pat, where we set an intention to create healing and wellness every living day. Tune into Transformation Talk Radio every 3rd Tuesday of each month at 11:30 a.m. Pacific and 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more guidance and support. Beyond this, I offer workshops to focus on your good health while reducing risk of disease, especially cancer, so you can do more of what you love and spend less time being sick. What I know for sure is that this is especially beneficial for couples who are pregnant, have young children, or teens, as you will give yourself and kids the greatest chance of living a longer, healthier life. So please join us at the Intentional Wellness Parenting Show. For more information, visit aureliecormier.com.